Hi everybody, welcome to a new edition of Let's Talk About Education with Antonio Corrales. Today we're going to be talking about transitioning into community colleges. Many of you have heard about what does it take to come from pre-K to 12 institutions to community colleges or to higher ed institutions. Many of you have questioned or asked yourself, how do I become a professor at the higher ed institution? How do I transition from a pre-K to 12 world to a university or to a community college? Well, today we have the honor to have with us Michelle Wilson, who's going to be talking to us about that, about how to transition from public school as a teacher, as an administrator, to a higher institution such as a community college. So with no further ado, welcome Michelle Wilson.
Thank you.
Us. Yes.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Well, can we start by letting you introduce yourself to the audience, kind of letting them know, about your career and how do you get to where you are right now?
Okay. So I started as many of us do, as a public ed teacher.
Okay.
I taught elementary, wasn't for me. I taught junior high, and then I became a junior high assistant principal, and I loved it. I really enjoyed mid-management. I enjoyed the level, but I'd always aspired to be a professor.
Okay.
So
Why do you think that many of pre-K through 12 professionals, either teachers or administrators, many of them have that ultimate goal of becoming a professor? What do you think that is? Or what do you think is the intrinsic motivation?
I think a lot of us had really positive experiences in higher education.
Okay.
I think we had good professors. And we feel that the specialization, the ability to hone in on teaching one thing in which we're experts, it really draws us in. At least that's what it was for me. I've always loved writing.
Well,
I've always loved reading, and I wanted to be a specialist in that area.
Maybe it's also because higher institutions are seen as the top of the scale in terms of academia.
There is a status thing. I didn't want to start with that, but certainly my father always said, Mija, you're going to be a career woman. And for him, the ultimate was higher education. So he started talking to me when I was very young about being a professor. It was his dream, and then it became my dream. And it seems like a natural evolution for some people. And it is the pinnacle. It is the ultimate, and
it's like the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and it is just as rewarding as you think it's going to be.
So, going back to your career, so you were a teacher, a campus administrator, and how does that transition occur? What was the when do you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to take this step towards higher ed. I'm going to take that leap of faith.
It's funny that you say that. I just posted a quote this morning, my motivational quote of the day, and it has to do with commitment. You just have to make a decision. And you know this. You talk to me about this all the time.
Yeah.
You just have to be willing to do it. You decide you're going to do it, and then you start branching out. For me, it was networking. I had worked with a counselor whose wife was teaching at the community college level. And so it was just one of those things. Do you want to come and teach? You have to start as an adjunct. Most of us do. That's the area, and if you know anything about community colleges, then you know that about 60% of the faculty are part-timers.
Right.
So you have to be willing to do the work, to teach night classes, to teach weekend classes, and that's your transition. Is you have to come in at the level that most people come in, which is part-time. And
that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because it could be scary. It was a little for me, and for everybody who has come from pre-K to 12 and evolved, so to say, to higher ed institution, to because you have to start basically all over again.
You do.
You basically have to, after having a certain status at the pre-K to 12 institution, you literally have to, start, like you're saying, maybe as an adjunct, and then
you're a rookie.
And when you're hired full time, you're right. I mean, basically, it's like you're learning a new system, you're learning new rules that we tend to think that they operate the same, but they don't. So, how was that little experience for you? That transition experience?
It was very humbling.
Okay.
It was
That's
humbling.
Really interesting.
I had been a boss.
Exactly.
A big boss, as we say. I had run a campus without my principal on site, with no electricity and 900 students. I had done discipline for years. I had worked with parents for years. I was well versed in my community. I was known. I had some level of status, you know, a professional reputation that was good. And I come in and I'm a part-time faculty member, and I don't know how to get keys, and I can't get into my classroom, and I don't know where anything is, and students look to me as the expert, and I had to be honest and say, you got to start somewhere. I'm starting with you.
Yeah.
So I had to ask a lot of questions. I had to be willing to do a lot of research on my own, and to not have the expectation of, hey, why aren't you handing this to me? You know, if you want to make it, you've got to go search for the information. And if you can't find the information, then you have to do the best you can in the moment.
Yeah.
And I allowed my students to see that side of my evolution into higher ed. I couldn't hide it from them.
Yeah.
You know, you can't get into the classroom.
Yeah.
I can't get into the classroom. Are you not important? No, I am. I'm just new. You know.
Well, and the other thing that I noticed, and I don't know if you noticed the same, but the decision-making process is more horizontal than where we come from. I mean, the pre-K to 12 used to be a little more top-down, and one thing that I have learned at the university level is that most of the decisions have to go through committees, and everybody has a voice.
Right.
So, what do you have similar experience on that?
I do, but it's hard for me to filter that because of my background.
Exactly.
So this is my challenge, and my unique position is, while I see things as a faculty member and I see that horizontal landscape and set up as far as management is concerned, I'm also looking at it from the perspective of a manager.
Correct.
Because I can't undo that experience, and so when a decision comes down or a decision comes across the table, I'm not as reactionary as I would be if I hadn't had that mid-management experience. I'm always looking for the reason.
The rationale behind it.
Yes, there has to be one. We don't just randomly make decisions in education. We have too many stakeholders.
Correct.
We have too many responsibilities, and at the community college level, we're so tied to so many different organizations and industry and all these partnerships. Our decisions are based on some rationale.
Correct.
And so while there is that horizontal, I'm always looking from that top-down perspective because it has to make sense to me. I have to see the big picture.
Correct.
And I'm always, even though I'm not in mid-management anymore, I always feel as though I have that responsibility of communicating the big
You have that
picture.
chip in your shoulder. Well, and you also, I think that approach is also because you always want to learn. So
Yes.
you really want to, because you have career goals, and you're always looking up, okay, why are we making these decisions? So when I have to be in that position, I understand the rationale, and I can make better decisions or similar decisions when it's my turn.
You always want things in your toolbox.
Correct.
And if you can't learn from those big decisions, even though I have been affected at the community college level, I have been affected by big decisions, like the athletic program situation we talked about. You know, being so tied to something that is closed down, I still had to look at it from the perspective of the decision making has to be sound.
Well,
from some level.
Let's jump into that, and that way you can bring that example when we talk about this, because universities and community colleges are different institutions, even though they're under the higher ed umbrella.
Right.
They're different institutions. So I want your perspective of what does it mean to work at a community college? What are your things that interest you the most about your job? What are the things that are more challenging about your job? And you can bring those examples that we're talking about, the athletic examples, so for the audience to kind of get to know
Right.
about it. So what does it mean to work at a community college? Let's start with that.
What comes to mind is the immediacy.
Okay.
I mean, it is what we're teaching and what we're doing. The students realize it is immediately applicable. They understand that when I'm teaching writing, that goes towards a resume. They understand that when I'm talking about the culture of higher education, that's the culture of the business world as well. So there's an immediacy. You teach something that they can use right away in the workplace.
It's more applicable than at university level where you have more theory, right?
There is a lot of theory at the university level, and then there is the that baccalaureate. It's just a different type of degree. The degrees that you're getting at the community college level, they are transition degrees so that you can get into the university, but we also have so many certificates, and we have so many licenses and so many opportunities, short-term opportunities for students to get into industry.
and start getting a job and start making
so
money.
it's the immediacy. It's just, okay, so I'm teaching you today so that you can get a job tomorrow.
And I guess you guys have a closer relationship with pre-K to 12 institutions, especially high schools, because those are your main feeders, right?
Yes, so the recruiting, I believe, I'm not an expert in recruiting at community colleges, but from what I see, because I have recruiters as mentors in my first gen program, is they're constantly in the community at the high schools. They're always looking to that vertical alignment.
Right.
And we want that alignment. We want to serve our immediate community because we're such a viable option for them. One of your questions was, why is it such a value to the student? And it's because we're in the community. We know our students. We know industry. We have these partnerships with, the petrochemical industry, with the medical community. And so our networking capabilities are all for the benefit of the student.
That is fantastic.
So
now, what about your your most interesting part of the job? Or what is the thing that you really like about your job as a community college professor?
As a community college professor, I suppose it has to be that when it comes right down to it, we're motivators. We're influencers, and at least that's how I see it. My background isn't the standard background. Most professors are content experts. They are experts in,
specific area.
Yeah, so whatever their degree is in, they're experts in that area. I have a teaching background. So I have a bachelor's in English, and then I taught, and then I have a mid-management degree for K through 12. I'm a Texas licensed principal and teacher. So my background is teaching, and that allows me to influence in a different way, because there is a soul on the other side of those eyes that are watching me at the front of the room. And I think the basic needs that we talk about for K through 12 students, they don't go away just because we're talking about andragogy, just because we're talking about teaching adults.
Right.
Those adults in those chairs still want the same things from me. They want reassurance. They want to know that I believe in them. And I think that background of being a K through 12 educator allows me to do the things that I used to do at the higher education level. So mentoring, I'm big on mentoring. When I was in junior high, I was a cheerleading coach, and I was a soccer coach, and I was always involved with student activities. And so I get to the community college level, and yes, I have this management background. What am I doing?
Right.
I started a first generation program. I started a mentoring program for our athletic teams, volleyball and basketball. I'm finding that there is still a need for the human connection. And I think that's the value of community colleges, is our class sizes are smaller. Our students are coming immediately from home. Their commute is not so big if we're, in the community.
So
it's
I guess the direct influence that you're having on those lives that make it really interesting. What about the most challenging ones? What are the things that you have to do, but sometimes you struggle with it?
Again, with the mid-management perspective, that global view, the big picture, persistence of our students, retention of our students. And I think it has to do with the population that we have. If you look just at my campus, 74% of the students are first generation. That means that neither parent in the home has a 4-year degree or guardian.
Wow.
And that means there is no linear, model for them to understand the culture of higher education. There is no background. And so barriers are very serious to those students. 74% at one campus alone. Now, I'm not talking district-wide for my community college, because we have 4 campuses. But imagine what the stats are in Texas, in the nation. The challenge with keeping our students goes back to connection, the human connection. That's what I believe. Because when I talk to my first gen students for the program that I've started, a lot of the things that frustrate them and make them buckle has to do with the interpersonal things that happen in the classroom. So if a professor does not seem to care about the student, they take that very personally. And I can understand why. If you don't have any adults in the home who can show you the model, then you're looking to the first person that you see, and that's going to be the professor that you're seeing 2 days a week. if that professor does not seem to understand your fears, and the students don't communicate these fears very well. They're faking it until they feel it.
Well, some of them still teenagers.
They are. They're young. A lot of them are young. And even our non-traditional students are coming with a lack of confidence because they haven't been in education in a long time. So the challenge for retention and persistence for me, from my perspective, goes back to having professors and staff members who are very aware that they're the first faces of higher education, and that they're the reason that students come back.
That is fantastic. Now, and you kind of visited about it a little bit, but if you have to define why community colleges are so valuable in our society, especially in the American culture, why is that? I mean, in your opinion, what is the role that community colleges play on students' life, on children's life, in terms of achieving their life goals?
There are so many different opportunities at the community college level. I mean, it's certainly a stepping stone for the transition to, you know, the baccalaureate degree and the master's degree, and certainly the terminal degrees like the doctorates. The value in terms of, you know, the cost.
Academic.
I mean, you simply cannot beat money-wise what money that you'll save at a community college level. That's just a reality.
Because they will say they could save even 2 years of of university
tuition.
time, tuition if they want to community college.
That's certainly one of them, and that's a big one for our families. And considering where we are, you know, Houston is a big metropolitan community, but we have so many small pockets, so many small cities, and I really feel like there's a larger network in Texas, and these community colleges have done an excellent job of plugging our students in to the industries.
And I was going to ask you that also I think the other value. What about the value that they have in terms of finding career that necessarily has to do with academics? The role that community college play in putting together, linking students with industries, what you were saying.
And it's
that many
it's
universities
almost
don't do
automatic.
That. Yeah.
We do at the community college level. So in my particular college, we have partnerships with the automobile industry. Right. So our students will do an internship with Toyota, and we have Toyota instructors. I believe we have people that are coming in from industry. Our students are wearing the brand. You know, they're wearing the model. Is that what it's called? So they're wearing the Toyota. They're wearing the. So that's one area. Then we have the petrochemical industry. So we're building a new facility in partnership with local, chemical plants. They're telling us what industry needs. What's the best technology? We have a maritime center. We have the ship channel. And so what does San Jacinto College have? We have a maritime building that's certifying captains and licensing maritime professionals. We're going to offer a bachelor's. We're offering a bachelor's very soon in the petrochemical area and in nursing.
That is interesting.
So I believe that many community colleges are working better and better with the community in terms of what does the industry need from us, because we can get our students into a career much faster. And then look at what we're doing. If we're putting those baccalaureate degrees at the community college level, then we're saying, hey, you don't have to leave us.
Right.
The transition is natural. We'll get you into industry, but come on back. We'll get you a bachelor's, and then you're that much better. You have that much more education. So
that is fantastic.
I really like that Texas is doing that. I really, when we got those 2 bachelor's degrees at my college, I just thought, wow. We're blowing things open at the community college level.
Revolutionizing itself. So
we really are.
And
we're removing barriers is what we're doing.
That's awesome. Now, what would you recommend to put into perspective the things that you have done? What do you recommend to pre-K to 12 professionals who are looking at us right now, administrators or teachers who dream about transitioning to higher ed institutions and see community college as a valuable option to make that first transition? What do you recommend?
It goes back to credentials. It really does. If you are interested in moving into the higher education level, you have to know what the credentials are for the area that you want to teach. Community colleges are getting much more competitive. I was sitting in our back to school staff development, we call it College Community Week, I think College Community Week, and I was noticing how many of the new hires had PhDs. It's becoming more and more important to be an expert in your field, so you have to find out what the credential is, and then you have to be willing to come in as a part-timer, because I was there for 2 years part-time before I moved into my department full-time. No easy feat. There are people that are there 15 years as an adjunct. If 60% of our staff is part-time, then that 40%, you're really fighting for a position.
Correct.
So you have to always be aware, always be looking. There are many higher ed websites that tell you what jobs are available. But if you're near a community college, just find out, take a look. You have to do your own research, know what the credentials are, be willing to come in as a part-timer, and to be willing to network, because you have to go where the jobs are.
Correct.
We have so many colleges in Houston, the Houston area. I'm learning that the transition from professor into management is just as challenging as you said it would be. You've got to apply and apply and apply. There are jobs out there, but you have to be willing to do the work.
Well, it's a humbling experience, because you're literally starting all over again. Mm-hmm. And like you said, basically getting to know the system, getting to know the rules of the game again. Right. It could be a humbling experience. Now, I want us to talk a little bit about your research, because for the audience, you're a future doctor. You're finishing your doctoral degree, and I'm really interested in you talking a little bit about your research, because I think it's a fascinating research, and it's something that may have an impact on community college in the middle long term. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what is it that you're investigating right now, and what are you working really diligently hard to get your findings, and talk about it.
So my study involves the relationship between community college funding and student achievement. We know that student achievement is the end-all be-all, and so how are we impacting that with our funding models? And so the funding model for community colleges in Texas is complicated. Mm-hmm. There are about 3 or 4 different parts of it. The part that I'm looking at has to do with community college tax rates, because college boards have to set a local property tax rate for the service area. And because those are based on property value, not all of the college districts have the same tax rate, nor can they generate the same revenue. And so if that money is dedicated towards maintenance and operations of campus facilities, and then of course we can sell bonds for the construction of new buildings or the purchase of land, ultimately how does that provide an equitable opportunity for all of our community college students in Texas?
Correct.
If we're not operating from the same? Very much, Kirby versus Edgewood. That was the public education bill that was deemed unconstitutional in 1987. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at the same thing, and very curious to see what the research is going to say.
And the impact that it may have on achievement. Is there a connection between money and ultimately?
And there was and for me, one of the things I'm looking at is transfer rates to universities. And these are student performance outcomes set by the Legislative Budget Board in Texas. So number of transfers, number of graduates and licenses or certificates, and then things like how many students in the developmental education sequence are completing the sequence on time, how many students are meeting their TSI, Texas Success Initiative, within the 2 years as required. So I'm tying it as closely as possible to what Texas already has available in terms of data. And a previous study showed that it did affect transfer rates. There were some demographic effects, on Hispanic students. So really excited. I actually will be interviewing the chief operating officer of Lone Star. Awesome. The Lone Star District, Mario K. Castillo. I'm very excited. Mario, can't wait to see you. He's an amazing man. He's got he's a lawyer. He's an attorney, so his background is just phenomenal. Very excited about talking to him. He's one of my interviews for this study.
That is fantastic. Well, we're looking forward to hear about your research, and I want to thank you one more time for being with us
Sure.
today. Folks out there, remember that we have this interview and many others on StudyEvaluationAssessment.com and also on the YouTube channel, Let's Talk About Education with Antonio Corrales. Michelle, thank you so much for being with us today. And
Great.
folks, help somebody today. See you
Great
next
to be
time.
here.